Well, good morning and welcome to City Hall. We're going to get started with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Christopher Tate is with Quail Springs United Methodist Church. He's going to lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilwoman Salyer if she'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But would everyone please stand?
Okay. Let us pray. Gracious and almighty God, as we gather in this time and in this place this day, we do so remembering that because of your love for us, that you are always with us. And so with that, we trust and believe that through the power of your Spirit, you are here with us even now. And so as such, we ask that you would lead us, that you would guide us, all of us, your servants, to help make decisions that would reflect the perfect love that you have for all of us, that you would help us to make decisions to choose those things that would help us to perfectly love our neighbor as we love ourselves, because we are reminded that in doing so, we most fully reflect your nature and the love that you have for all your children. It is in the mighty name of Christ that we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a lot of exciting events coming up. It's that time of year when we realize winter is on its way and there's a rush to get outdoor events into the schedule. And the first one we're going to talk about today is open streets. So I'm going to ask, we have a gathering from there's Carrie, the Oklahoma City County Board of Health, and others involved with the city to come forward. And we have a proclamation that the clerk will read, and we'll all learn more about this opportunity to get outside and congregate inside Oklahoma City.
Whereas the City of Oklahoma City has prioritized the health and well-being of all its residents. Active transportation promotes healthier residents with closer ties to their community. And whereas the more residents who choose active transportation, the greater impact we can have on halting the rise of obesity rates. Whereas Open Streets OKC reclaims part of a busy street for a few hours for non-motorized activity, everyone is invited to celebrate the recreational fun at Wiley Post Park and meet local business owners as they walk, bike, skate, and board down South Robinson Avenue to the festive atmosphere of the historic Capitol Hill Business District in Oklahoma City. Whereas Oklahoma City County Health Department and its partners are hosting Open Streets OKC from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday, October 29th, from Wiley Post Park down Robinson Avenue to Southwest 29th Street. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim October 29th as Open Streets OKC Day in Oklahoma City.
All right, let's show our appreciation to the Oklahoma City County Board of Health and others who are putting on Open Streets. And Carrie Bloomer is here. Carrie, break it down for us. What's this an opportunity to do?
So, how many of you have been to Open Streets? So this is our third year in South Oklahoma City. Open Streets is a really simple concept. You basically close down a main road for 4 hours. No cars can be on the road. People bike, walk, skate. There's all kinds of activities that our partners come and offer. I think we have 50 to 60 different activities. It's completely free, and it's all about getting moving, health and wellness, and promoting active transportation.
And it's fun.
Yes.
It is fun. Yes. And so if you have kids or grandchildren, you can walk with them. Are dogs welcome on a leash?
Dogs are welcome on a leash, and if you want to dress your dog up in a costume, we will not turn you away.
And you won't be able to recognize anybody's dog. All right. We appreciate it very much. And the City County Board of Health has a great relationship with the city, and they've done wonders. They are nationally recognized now as one of the top city-county health organizations in the country. Their progress in our community health is remarkable, and so we really do owe them a big round of applause as they leave. Thank you. Thanks, Gary. And it is Fire Prevention Month in the city of Oklahoma City. We've got our fire chief here, Richard Kelly, Deputy Chief Harold Thompson, Battalion Chief Kevin Berry, and Captain Chad Wild. Would you guys come up? We love our firefighters, don't we? I'll ask the clerk to read our proclamations.
Whereas the Oklahoma City Fire Department responded to nearly 75,000 calls for emergency assistance in 2016. Whereas during that same year, fire killed 10 of our citizens, injured 9 others, and caused property loss in excess of $15 million. Whereas the men and women of the Oklahoma City Fire Department are witness to the loss and devastation caused by the fire firsthand, not only for those citizens who have lost their loved ones or their homes and belongings to fire, but for their co-workers injured or killed in the line of duty. Whereas the Oklahoma City Fire Department is actively engaged in year-round public education programs to raise awareness of fire safety to help prevent the frequency and severity of fires in our city. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 as Fire Prevention Month in Oklahoma City, and encourages all citizens to learn about fire prevention and fire safety and to apply these practices at home, at work, and throughout our city.
And Chief Kelly, it's just a good time of the year to remind everybody about fire safety.
Yes, sir, it is. This year's theme for Fire Prevention Month is 2 ways out. And what we want to encourage people and families to learn about EDITH, exit drills in the home. This gives an opportunity to sit down with your family, to learn how to get out of your structure, to identify ways to get out, and also an opportunity to look for smoke alarms, check their smoke alarms, make sure that they do work. We ask that they check those every month. Again, it's something we do year-round, but this time of year we want to focus on those areas. We want to definitely try to reduce the number of loss of life in the city, and that's what our focus is, so we want to bring that to light. So on the smoke alarms, we want to encourage that any citizen, any resident can go to any fire station and get a free smoke alarm. We'll put that up in their house. Come check it out. We'll actually do a safety inspection of their home. So we want to encourage people to get involved this month and recognize that this is Fire Prevention Month.
Absolutely free to our citizens. So if you know anyone who might not have checked their smoke alarm and their safety apparatus anytime recently, please give our people a call so we don't have any more of the loss of life that we experienced in 2016. And let's show our appreciation to our firefighters. And coming up soon, we have Trick or Treat. Where's Doug Cupper? Doug, come on up. Now, you may not recognize Doug because he's in costume. Doug is portraying Albert Einstein this morning. If there's any.
Oh.
All right, we have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas Halloween is a time for jack-o'-lanterns and the annual appearance of ghosts, goblins, and strange and mysterious creatures. Whereas our city's children celebrate Halloween by dressing in costumes and visiting homes in their neighborhoods to receive traditional holiday treats. Whereas the annual Halloween activities provide an opportunity for people in our community to become better acquainted. It is important to our community that children be allowed to enjoy these traditional activities, but that measures be taken to ensure the safety of the children and protect the rights of the homeowners. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim Tuesday, October 31st, as Trick or Treat Night in Oklahoma City, and he encourages children and adults to cooperate in limiting the time of activities to the afternoon and early evening hours, that households indicate their willingness to welcome their neighbors by turning on their porch and exterior lights, that youngsters only call on homes so lighted, and he asks the cooperation of all citizens, young and old, in making this a happy and safe occasion for all.
All right, let's show our appreciation. Go over our safety rules for the youngsters this year.
Again, we want to make sure that the children are safe when they go out trick-or-treating. You know, it's always a good idea to take them to safe environments, safe neighborhoods, utilize the churches that have the trunk and treats and things along those lines. Make sure the kids are wearing clothing that reflects light so that, you know, if they are crossing streets, automobile lights will light them up and things along those lines so that they stay safe. We want to make sure that the kids have not a ghoulish trick-or-treat, but a happy trick-or-treat. Thank you.
You bet. And if kids want to participate, they should go to houses that have their porch light on. So if you're wanting to participate in trick-or-treat Tuesday, October 31st, turn your porch light on. Most people open the door, at least the stronger door, and I can't tell you how most adults have really fond memories of trick-or-treat.
I know I do.
I'm glad we can participate in it. Let's show our appreciation to Doug and the Parks Department. Thanks, Doug. You bet. And, I called him Doug and gave away his disguise, but thank you, Albert. All right, each month, the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City helps us honor one teacher in the Oklahoma City metro area as our Teacher of the Month. And this month, our winner is Fred Evans of Millwood. Fred, come on up. And why don't you bring your support group up with you? We have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas Fred Evans has been named Teacher of the Month for October 2017 by the Millwood Public School District and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. Fred is a Kappa Delta Pi honor student in the Master of Arts in Educational Leadership program at Southern Nazarene University and has also completed 2 undergraduate degrees at the University of Central Oklahoma. He has taught in the Millwood School District for 7 years and for 2 years in the other school districts in the greater Oklahoma City area. Fred is a member of the Millwood District's Improvement and Accreditation Committee and is the co-director of the district's Parent University Program, an annual program that bridges the community and the district and supports the needs of parents and students through community involvement. Whereas Fred, in conjunction with the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma, established and directs the school food pantry program, which is accessible to all high school, arts academy, and middle school students and their families. Whereas Fred's passion for teaching is evident to students by his availability for tutoring both before and after school. He seeks to ensure that students avail themselves of every opportunity to be academically successful. Whereas Fred attributes his classroom success to seeking continuous improvement by attending summer educational programs like the Supreme Court Summer Institute in Washington, D.C., which helps to enlighten students on the purpose of the federal court system, and the Dr. William Holtzclaw Summer Institute in Mississippi, which provides background education for the course he teaches in Black American history. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Fred Evans on his selection as the October Teacher of the Month by the Millwood Public School District and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
Let's show our appreciation to Fred and the other educators that are here. And, Fred, you were telling me you had some interesting life experiences before you became a teacher.
Yes. Good morning. This is my 9th year as an educator in Oklahoma City, but prior to that, I was in the military. I served in the military for almost 25 years, and I taught public health in San Antonio, which is where I determined that's what I'm going to do when I grow up. I want to be a teacher. But my last 5 years in the military, I served as the senior military White House social aide under President Clinton for a year, and then President Bush for 4 years, former President Bush for 4 years. And it was a great time, but I look forward to coming to Oklahoma to make this my home. I grew up in Mississippi, but I will tell you I'm honored to be acknowledged as the Teacher of the Month, but teachers cannot do it alone. We take other teachers who work with us, our superintendents, our principals, and our kids. We're all here for the kids, so I take this honor for all of our teachers in Oklahoma City who spend our time, our hours, our resources to educate our children. And I will tell you, I will encourage you, please, on every opportunity that you have to vote in good for our teachers, please do so. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that we need a motion. So with that being said, I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, cast your votes. And it's official. Fred is now the Teacher of the Month. We're also starting something new about workforce safety in Oklahoma City. You know, we have over 4,000 employees, and our effort here is to recognize safety procedures and people who excel in that area to keep our workforce as safe environment as possible. And we're going to bring Christopher Black in the Public Works Department up. Chris, come on up. The rest of you guys in Public Works, come on up too. Let's read the resolution, and we'll hear more from Chris.
Whereas Christopher Black has been a city employee for 5 years and is a crew chief for the Streets, Traffic, and Drainage Division of the Public Works Department. Whereas Christopher is actively involved in minor and major repairs on equipment, machinery, and components, and performs routine inspections and preventative maintenance on the Oklahoma River and all necessary critical infrastructure and infrastructure protection processes. Whereas Christopher is responsible for the planning and oversight of work activities for himself and for crew worker 2 employees in a complex and potentially hazardous environment. Chris is a very safety-conscious employee who demonstrates the ability to problem solve and provide solutions for various complex and challenging tasks for the Oklahoma River program. Whereas Christopher identifies safety roles and responsibilities in the workplace, continually reminding his crew of the importance of the team mentality and proactively pre-planning job tasks to minimize workplace hazards. Whereas Christopher has contributed to the reduction of employee injuries for his crew since being appointed to his current position. Christopher was selected by the City of Oklahoma City Safety Advisory Recognition Subcommittee as the most deserving employee for the quarterly Safety Star Award. Whereas this council desires to recognize Christopher Black for his dedication, professionalism, and commitment to improving workplace safety within the City of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Christopher Black, October 2017, City of Oklahoma City Quarterly Safety Star.
Let's show our appreciation to our city employees. That's for you. We do need to vote on this one as well. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. And it's unanimous. Hope you were expecting that. Thank anybody you'd like to thank.
Well, I'll just first of all, I'd like to thank the Public Works and Street and Drainage Department for nominating me for this award, and just being a trendsetter, and hope that, you know, I have other people in the department following my footsteps.
Let's show our appreciation to all these guys. Thank you all very much for coming down. All right, we're on item 4 of the council agenda. Item 4 is a journal of council proceedings. 4A is to receive the journal for October 10th, and 4B is to approve the journal for September 26th. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes on the journal. It passes unanimously. And item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
Yes, Mayor, I have several. If you will turn to page 24 of your agenda, item number 9K1. Item B is in boy, 17501 Durban Park Road. Please strike that to re-notify. Item F is in Frank, 5314 Rockwood Avenue. Strike that one. The owner has secured. Item J is in John, 2124 Northwest 18th Street. We ask that that item be stricken to re-notify. Item K is in King, 1520 Northwest 23rd Street. strike owner has secured. Item N as in Nora, 1514 Southwest 33rd, strike owner has secured. On page 25, item number 9L1, item number B as in boy, 17501 Durban Park Road, strike to re-notify. Item G as in George, 5314 Rockwood Avenue, strike, owner has secured. Item I as in Ida, 2124 Northwest 18th Street, strike that item to re-notify. Item J as in John, 1520 Northwest 23rd Street, strike, the owner has secured. And item M as in Mary, 1541 Southwest 33rd Street, strike that item, owner has secured. That's it, Mayor.
All right, any other requests for uncontested continuances? Move on to item 6, revocable permits. We have a couple of requests today. First of all, is anyone here from the Western Avenue Association? All right, come on up forward. Let's hear more about the 2017 Wizards on Western, which is scheduled for November 12th at Memorial Park on Northwest 36th Street. Good morning. We will need your name and address for the record.
It's Stephanie Humes, and it's 2824 Northwest 15th Street.
Well, tell us about Wizards on Western.
Okay, so this is our second year actually to close down the street, third year to do the event. We're working with plenty of nonprofits to have them come out and be able to spread their words, and then we have vendors, food trucks. It's a free event for families and everyone, actually. It's Harry Potter themed, so it's lots of fans. And we'll just plan to have a good time.
All right, Memorial Park is at 36th.
Yeah, it's at
Western.
36th in between Western and Classen.
And that's
there will
on
be, Quidditch and food trucks and vendors down there.
November 12th.
November 12th, Sunday.
All right.
Yeah.
It's in Ward 2, Ed.
Move for approval.
All right, cast your votes. It's passed unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, and we have another revocable right-of-way permit with the same group holding the same event. Is there an explanation for that? Oh, come on up and tell us the explanation for that. So it looks like you have oh, I see. You needed 2 permits because it's going on in 2 locations that are close by.
Yes.
And City Hall made you do 2 permits. I get it now. Okay, well, go ahead and discuss how this one is different than the last one.
Okay, so this one will be the street closure from 44th to 39th on Western Avenue. So lots of vendors, food trucks as well. We had a large crowd, so we've kind of expanded the footprint this year, made sure a lot more street closures and directions are given so people know where to go and people can still have fun.
All right.
Is it November 12th is a Sunday?
It's a Sunday, yeah, so it'll be from 1 to 6 on Sunday.
Okay.
All right.
Move
Ed,
for approval.
we have a motion. Is there a second? Cast your votes. All right. Doubly good fun. All right. Item 6B is a request with Capitol Hill Main Street to hold the Haunt the Hill event on Halloween. Is there anyone here from Capitol Hill Main Street? Come on up. Good morning. We'll need your name and address for the record.
Donna Cervantes, 319 Southwest 25th.
All right. And tell us about this event on Halloween.
This is, again, a safe trick-or-treating event. We close the street on Southwest 25th between Hudson and Robinson. We allow businesses and nonprofit organizations to set up like a trunk-or-treat feel and allow our local families just to have a good, safe time. This year, we've added something new. We're opening up the old Yale Theater, which is under new ownership and under renovation, but we have some friends setting up a spooky haunted theater is what we're calling it, and trying that out this year, something new and something to attract more from around the city. That'll be open on Saturday, Sunday, and then Haunt the Hill is the street closure only on Tuesday, Halloween.
Okay, sounds like a full weekend of events all the way into Tuesday. Is there a motion? It's in Ward 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Donna and the historic Capitol Hill group down there have been putting on some great events. So with that, I'd move for approval.
All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Donna. We'll recess the council meeting, convened as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. Is there a motion? All right, comments or questions on the MFA?
May I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
First of all, item A, the resolution renewing the agreement with the Almonte Library. Just have a few quotes about libraries in general, just to squash any opposition to this. First, from former First Lady Laura Bush, libraries allow children to ask questions about the world and find answers. And the wonderful thing is that once a child learns to use a library, the doors to learning are always open. Prior to her, former First Lady, Lady Bird Johnson, perhaps no place in any community is so totally democratic as the town library. The only entrance requirement is interest. Malcolm X, my alma mater was books, a good library. I could spend the rest of my life reading, just satisfying my curiosity. A couple of more, I fell in love with reading when I was allowed to choose whatever books I wanted to check out of the library. And finally, closing a public library is child abuse because it hinders child development. So this is a very important component of the Metropolitan Library System. When it was opened, Larry, 5 years ago or 6, they thought it might, they opened it initially just to serve as a temporary library while the Southern Oaks was being renovated. They achieved so many new patrons or members as a result of opening it, they decided to keep it open permanently. And with the voters' approval last month of the general obligation bonds, a new library will be constructed. And this has reached so many new families. In this particular area, the library noticed that what was happening is a whole family would show up. So many times in this neighborhood, the family may only have one vehicle, or they walk, or they take public transportation, and it becomes a whole family outing. So it's certainly serving an important role, and it's great to be a part of that service. So thank you. I do have another comment.
Okay, go keep going.
So that was a positive comment. Item B and C, it looks like we're approving to pay $54 million in health care insurance for our retired employees, plus on top of that, over $4 million of Social Security supplemental coverage, which I'm becoming more familiar with as my wife will soon be having a birthday in a couple of months. That,
happy to let you know that.
yeah, that she gets to participate in that process. And my point is we need to continue this coverage, but it's an example of how health insurance has gotten out of control. And I think, just as we discussed last week, that it's time that we held our congressional delegation accountable as it relates to issues impacting the city of Oklahoma City, in particular the Main Street Fairness Act, which would provide taxation of internet sales. Congress really needs to get control over this health care problem. To call it the Affordable Health Care Act is certainly a misnomer. We've seen increases well over 10% for the last several years. Currently, health insurance costs are taking approximately 10% of the total expenditures by businesses. In our situation, now I know this comes out of the municipal facilities authorities, but the city's total annual budget is approximately, for the general fund, approximately $500 million. So this exceeds 10%. And this is just for the retired individuals that we're covering. You tack on the health insurance for the other employees, and it becomes a very large number. I'm just suggesting that this is impacting the city of Oklahoma City, and we need to let our congressional delegation know that if we agree, that we're dissatisfied with the escalation of insurance costs, and why they continue to prevent ideas such as the ability for insurance companies to sell health insurance across state lines is beyond my understanding. I have yet to hear an explanation why Senator Rand Paul's proposals wouldn't work. We allow other types of insurance to be sold across state lines, life insurance, casualty insurance. What is the reason we want to prevent health insurance, which reduces competition, increases prices, and yet Congress won't allow that? So I just think if this council is concerned about this as much as I am, we should write a letter to each member of our congressional delegation. Now we've got 2 points. I'm not going to suggest we add a third one, such as tax reform, which I'm also interested in, but yet we still can't make progress in that area. But I would say, at least for right now, focusing on 2 components, their inaction, inability to reach agreements, is certainly impacting the city's finances in regards to, 1, an expense, that being health insurance, and 2, a potential source of revenue, and that's sales tax on internet sales. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, David. All right. Do we have a motion and a second?
Second.
Okay. Cast your votes on the MFA. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. Just 2 items. All right. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCPPA, convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. Just the claims and payroll today. Second. All right. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right. Are there any individual considerations on the consent docket?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 7AJ.
AJ. All right.
And Mayor, I'd like to look at 7S.
S is in Sam. All right. Yeah, Jim.
Z and AG2.
AG2. All right.
And quick question on AF, like Frank.
Question on AF. All right. John, why don't you jump in and get us started with AJ?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. AJ is sidewalk improvements, and I just want to point out item number 4, which is North Lottie Avenue from Northeast 23rd to Northeast 8th, Northeast 12th Street to North Lottie Avenue, and then Northeast 16th from North Prospect Avenue to Martin Luther King, and from North Prospect Avenue from Northeast 20th to Northeast 16th. And I have a quick question. Are we applying for a grant, or we have received this grant?
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. So the locations that you have on this grant are actually locations that are included in our 2017 bond program, but they're eligible for this grant. So anytime we have an opportunity to identify additional funding sources, we do. So if we get awarded on these, we'll simply have additional bond monies that we can spend at new locations.
All right, excellent. So we have been awarded, or we're applying?
This is the application.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Meg?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention 7S and really compliment the staff for being such good stewards of some of our federal dollars over the years. This is a resolution that approves a loan from the Murrah District Revolving Loan Fund. And, you know, people may not remember, but following the Murrah bombing, we were the recipient of substantial dollars from the federal government, some of which was designed to help attract businesses to the designated area and to help those that were already down there. And a fair amount of those dollars were in a revolving fund, so that as people used them and paid them back, additional funds became available. And so recently, the Journal Record Building, which houses the memorial and now Heritage Trust, was sold, developed, and an additional story was added to the building. now making the building a high-rise in a sense, and it's required to meet some additional codes. And so they were able to access these dollars. It is a loan. It will pay back over 15 years, but it is available at a very low interest rate to help them make these improvements. So it's just, you know, a recognition 20 years later that we have been able to manage these programs so well that those dollars are still helping rebuild downtown.
It is amazing. 20 years.
It's great.
All right. James, you wanted to discuss item Z and AG2?
Item Z is a project that I mentioned before, but this is the contract awarding the repaving of Sarah Road just north of Reno. Reason I'm mentioning it now is because it actually has a schedule. So the construction's supposed to start in November, and then it should end in March. And it is a joint project with Westgate Park. They're paying for half of the construction costs. And then AG2 is it's a project that is, this item we're actually allocating $450,000 from the 2007 GEO bond for right-of-way costs to State Highway 4 in between State Highway 66 and Northwest Expressway, which part of that's in Yukon, part of it's in Oklahoma City. So it's an interlocal agreement with Yukon as well. There's been numerous car accidents up in this area, and we're continuing to develop it residentially. And so the residents up there have wanted us to do something about it, and so this is, but it is a state highway, so it's a joint project with them, but ultimately it's ODOT that's going to be doing it. And so the plans are about 30% complete. The plans include widening at portions of it, shoulder extensions, turn lanes, so it should make this portion of State Highway much safer whenever it's done. The bidding won't actually happen until 2020, so we're still a few years away from actually making it safer. But I just wanted to point out that the process is going, and we'll eventually get there. Did I miss anything, Eric? Okay, that's it.
All right. Thanks, James. And did you do AG2 also? Okay. Ed, AF?
Eric, can you educate, this is a $2.7 million project on West Memorial from Portland to Penn, and it's 2.7 million, half of it's federal funds. Can you educate me on how we got 1.3 million in federal funds? Is it ACOG that's recommended?
It was ACOG. I checked on that and researched it. It was ACOG that selected this program. And if you've driven roads, you know it's incredibly needed.
Yeah, but what federal program is it that we're applying for and getting 1.3 million?
So annually, the city and other cities in the metropolitan area that participate with the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, ACOG, participate in project submittals. And this was one that was submitted by ACOG to be partially funded by the city of Oklahoma City. So this was awarded to us through that ACOG process that occurs annually. And the funds, I believe, come federally to the state, and then the state disperses them to the municipalities through a competitive application process.
So does ACOG ask us for a recommendation?
What we actually do each year is we submit a list of projects from the city of Oklahoma City. We work very closely with the planning department. We look at safety projects, so this can do anything from traffic signals to striping. This also includes road enhancement projects like this one, and in some cases it's resurfacing, especially those projects that are starting to become critical and may not have another funding source. Clearly, we were able to identify some bond funding that could pay for about 50% of it, so matching that with the ACOG funds makes it a complete project that we can push forward.
So that was my second question, is it's 1.4 million of unlisted funds from the 2007?
Yes.
And we've talked about how that number has been getting smaller and smaller. Are you gonna, this seems like a large allocation from unlisted funds. Are you gonna have enough?
Absolutely. So we are actually coming to the end of the 2007 bond issue, and I would be happy to report to the council that the unlisted funds, because we've been very conservative on the expenditure of those up to this point, we will finish the bond program and have some unlisted remaining. So we're able to make these recommendations to you like today to start using those funds. And of course, with the 17 being passed, we have a new unlisted funding source that will help us go into the next 10 years.
How many, don't you still have a couple $100 million in, how many of street projects are still left from 2007?
There is actually only about $90 million left to be sold under the 2007 bond issue. The last of the sales is expected to occur in 2019. Total street projects remaining, I need to get you an updated number, but I would tell you that the majority of the widenings are complete and we're in the resurfacings now. The resurfacings have a lot less risk because there's not right-of-way and utilities that we've experienced in those early years with the bond program.
widenings. So how much is left in the unlisted after this?
I need to get you a new number on that, and so I can check on that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, Eric. All right, ready to vote the consent docket? We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. On to the concurrence docket.
Move those items subject to individual consideration.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the concurrence? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. That moves us on to item 9. These are items that require a separate vote. We start with a zoning case in Ward 3. It's an ABC issue at 3304 Southwest 29th Street. Larry?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Has anybody signed up? This was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. On light of that, I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes on item 9A. It passes unanimously. Item 9B would close an easement in Ward 4.
Thank you, Your Honor. Has anyone signed up to speak? I move for approval.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9C comes to us from the Traffic Commission. The first would work on some 45-degree angled parking in Ward 2. Ed, you okay with this?
Yeah, Francis, has anybody signed to speak up on 1 through 4? No. Okay, move for approval.
All right, we'll take these quite quickly then. This is item 9C1. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Is there a motion on 2?
Move for approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 3.
Move for approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 4.
Move for approval.
Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. Item 9C5 is a parking issue in Ward 6. This is Southwest 35th Street. Meg?
Yes, Mayor, we also have a series of these that were requested by Seven Brothers Masonry to establish 90-degree parking within sort of an inset area on Southwest 35th Street. I would move for approval of C5.
All right, we're voting on 9C5. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 9C6 is also in Ward 6. This is a reserved space for the physically disabled.
Same location, Southwest 35th Street. Move approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9C7 would establish a no parking anytime restriction on the east of Indiana Avenue on Southwest 15th Street. It's in Ward 6, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor. These are a request of the Oklahoma City Fire Department, actually. Move approval of C7.
All right, we're voting on 9C7. It passes unanimously. 9C8's also in that area.
Yep, C8 is also a fire department request. Move approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And 9C9.
And 9C9 is the same. Move approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9D is here for a final hearing. This has to do with our franchise agreement with Cox Television. Is anyone here hoping to speak against this item today? All right. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Thanks to all involved with that. Item 9E is a public hearing dealing with the Western Avenue Business Improvement District, and this first vote would adopt and confirm the annual assessment roll. Is there anyone here that's hoping to speak under item 9E2? All right, how about a motion then to move that forward? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And then item 9F would adopt and set the assessment roll in the Western Avenue Business District. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9G is an item that's being introduced today, and Amanda's going to give us a presentation.
Good morning. I'm here to speak to you about an amendment of the ordinance known as the Median Safety Ordinance. Specifically, if there are any questions related to the litigation of the current ordinance, I would suggest that the council enter into executive session. There's an item on the council's agenda under item W that would allow for you to enter into executive session, and then any vote on this matter could be deferred until after that executive session if that's so requested. I'd like to begin by reiterating that medians are a dangerous location. They are a strip of concrete in the middle of lanes of traffic where vehicles move at potentially high speeds. We are facing more and more distracted drivers every day, whether it be through text messages, which is now illegal but still done, vehicles traveling at high speeds while talking on the phone, or other matters that distract drivers. Medians are physical barriers that are intended to separate opposite directions of traffic, traveling traffic, and they're intended to stop vehicles from traveling over to the opposing side. They can be used for a temporary respite for pedestrians that are crossing the street, but are not intended, as sidewalks are, to be used by pedestrians for a means of travel, to sit, stand, or stay for prolonged periods of time. There has been some concerns that our current median safety ordinance is not allowing enough medians to be available for people to express their whatever activity they would like. As with any ordinance that goes into effect, there's a time period for review and clarification. In this situation, we conducted more study and research to determine what is the highest risk to pedestrians that may sit, stand, or stay on a median for longer than just that time period needed to cross the street. And it was determined that the highest risk is by vehicles that are traveling at high rate of speed. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration determined that vehicles that are traveling at 40 miles per hour have a 85% chance, if the pedestrian is involved in an accident, there's an 85% chance that the result will be death of that pedestrian. That is the highest risk that we are attempting to mitigate by amending this ordinance to deal with people sitting, standing, or staying on a median with traffic with an abutting speed of 40 miles per hour or more. We don't want to have that media coverage of a pedestrian that has been harmed or killed because they were standing, or staying in that median. With higher speeds comes less reaction time. The average reaction time for drivers is about 1.5 seconds. This time is higher at night. It's also, the reaction time is higher during straightaways rather than at intersections and corners. And that's because drivers are not anticipating pedestrians being in those areas. So if you have a vehicle that's traveling 40 miles per hour and they are encountered by a hazard, something that is unexpected, then they will travel approximately 90 feet or 30 yards before they actually have a reaction or response, like braking or swerving. This is important to note that because when we're dealing with pedestrians and that higher rate of speed, that increases the likelihood of the grievous injuries to the pedestrians as well as fatality. Based upon this information, as well as other statistics that are provided in the ordinance, we feel that it is appropriate to amend the median safety ordinance to not only deal with the individuals that are standing at medians at intersections, where we've been told in previous city council meetings by Chief City that that's a dangerous location because of the likelihood of collisions which occur in the intersection. 76% of all collisions that occur in intersections can migrate onto medians and affect pedestrians that may be standing on those medians, but also it will help protect the pedestrians that are standing on medians and straightaways where we know that we have the highest, that drivers are more likely to have longer reaction times, and where we have higher speeds, we have more likely to have deaths. With this amendment, there will be an additional at least 103 medians that are no longer covered by the median safety ordinance. Those are going to be medians where there's a lower speed of under 40 miles per hour, and thus you have less likely chance of the pedestrian that would be involved in an accident actually being killed or suffering from grievous bodily injury. The specific statistics that are provided are that the Center for Disease and Control and Prevention has reported that higher motor vehicle speeds increase both the likelihood of pedestrian being struck by a motor vehicle, but also the severity of the injury. That at 40 miles per hour, there's an 85% chance of fatality compared to only a 5% chance of fatality at 20 miles per hour and a 45% chance of fatality at 30 miles per hour. You also have the U.S. Department of Transportation National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, who reported there were 192 pedestrian injured per day in traffic accidents, and on average, the pedestrian was killed nearly 1.6 hours. A pedestrian was killed nearly every 1.6 hours, and more than 7.5 minutes in traffic. They're injured in more than every 7.5 minutes in traffic crashes. In 2015, there were 5,376 pedestrians killed in traffic crashes, and that number is the highest since 1996. Oklahoma City, their own statistics showed an increase from the pedestrians that were killed in auto pedestrian accidents from 2014 to 2015. This increase that we are seeing is a public safety concern, and this median safety ordinance is an attempt by the City of Oklahoma City to continue to protect the citizens of Oklahoma City and mitigate that high risk of death and grievous bodily injury to those individuals who would seek to sit, stand, or stay on the median. Another interesting statistics is that 90% of all pedestrians that were killed in traffic collisions involved a single car accident. So not only do we have that high risk that Chief City indicated from 76% of collisions happening in intersections, you also have the higher 90% figure of single car accidents that can cause fatalities to pedestrians. And lastly, we have also provided done some more research on whether or not there is an actual width at which a median does become safe for pedestrians to sit, stand, or stay for longer than just that temporary respite in crossing the street. And the traffic engineers that we have consulted with have determined that there is not a study that can be done or a width at which that median becomes a safe location. And that's important to note because our previous ordinance did have a width. We feel like this ordinance is more on point to protecting what is the highest risk, which is death to pedestrians.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. These are adjustments we're making. And if anybody has comments or questions, we should probably reserve that for executive session. Does anybody want to move this to executive session later? Or are you ready to go and have it introduced? All right, how about a motion then to introduce item 9G?
Move the item.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously.
Mayor, since we've done that, may I ask Amanda a question?
No.
No, okay. We can ask later.
Item 9H would update our city retirement system and get us in alliance with IRS code. All right. We're voting on item 9H, introducing this today for a public hearing on November 7th, and it passes unanimously. All right. Item 9 is a price adjustment from the Water Trust. Item being introduced today, and there'll be a public hearing November 7th, and then a final hearing scheduled for November 21st. Is there a motion to introduce the item today? No. Chris?
Morning, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Good morning. The last water sewer cost service study was performed in 2014, and a 3-year rate plan was adopted by City Council at that time, where the last rate increase was implemented October 2016. So over the past year, we have performed an updated cost service study for water wastewater services. We have a 4-year rate plan recommended pursuant to that study. Brett Weingart, the Assistant Utilities Director and Jennifer Ivey, our rate consultant from Carollo, will do the presentation today, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have afterwards. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Oklahoma City has had a long history
of providing water supply to central Oklahoma of over 100 years. This began in the period of time, next slide. Hopefully you can see that on your screens, even though it's not on this screen. Of providing water clear back when we were at the land run days, with people going to the Santa Fe Depot to get water from in their buckets, to the construction of the Overholser Lake and Dam in 18 and 20, to 47 after the drought of the 30s with the construction of Hefner, and to the late 50s and early 60s with the construction of Draper, Atoka Lakes, and the 100-mile pipeline between them, and the water plant and the distribution and transmission systems into town in Oklahoma City. From those days past to today, where we are now at a point where in 2010, Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust and the City of Oklahoma City purchased water storage rights in Sardis Lake, and the settlement agreement with the tribes in 2016, making possible Oklahoma City's pursuit of long-term water supply through 2016. Next slide. And on that slide right there, you will see the first and the second 100-mile pipeline. The first pipeline is a 60-inch diameter pipeline. The second pipeline will be a 72-inch pipeline, expanding our ability to meet our current population. In Oklahoma City, we have about 650,000 residents. In central Oklahoma, we have about 1.3 million people residing in central Oklahoma. Of that, 1.2 million of those people will drink water produced by Oklahoma City on any one particular day due to the cells we have inside and outside of the city. Next slide. On our capital plan, you'll see the two pie charts. The first pie chart is the next 5 years. Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will spend $1.3 billion on a capital program. Over the 10-year period, $2.5 billion. When you compare that, as an example, over the last 5 years, the Water Trust has spent $556.5 million on a capital plan. So we're going to a much larger capital plan as we pursue this additional water supply. We'll be spending over $700 million just on the 100-mile pipeline itself. When you look at the proportionality of the capital plan, over the next 5 years, the raw water capital improvements will be 46% of the entire expenditures for capital. 70% of all the expenditures will be for water. So many improvements will be made to the water system over the next 5 years. 66% of all of the improvements for water over the 10 years. So we're spending a lot of money on water over the next 10 years so we can capitalize on that, satisfying the long-term water supplies for central Oklahoma. There will be other capital projects that we'll talk about in a minute in the capital plan. Next slide. You see the water in that picture to the lower left. That is the flood from 2015 that washed out the Atoka spillway. If you've been able to go down to Atoka, you see all the concrete once that water receded, destroyed, and we'll be repairing that as a part of the project that is expected to be in the $35 to $40 million range. We'll also be doing more water and wastewater main replacements in neighborhoods. We're increasing the amount of investments in neighborhoods to improve the service that they have as well. Next slide. We're also changing the strategy on our capital plan. We're moving to an asset management program. Currently, we maintain and replace our infrastructure based on the failure rate. How many main breaks we have in a certain area will dictate how fast we go about and the priorities of those. We're moving to an asset management program where we will be examining the condition of the assets, developing maintenance, repair, and replacement programs based on the current state and remaining useful life of those assets. That will result in reduced service disruptions to customers over time, more effective use of the monies that we have for the capital plan, and better service to our citizens. Next slide. In Oklahoma City, we have about 213,000 customers connected that we provide bills to directly. Those are in City of Oklahoma City, out in the unincorporated counties, in War Acres, and the Village. We also have, of course, the wholesale connections. We have 18 other communities, other cities and rural water districts that we provide drinking water or wholesale water or wastewater wholesale service. Through economies of scale, these outside city sales, just like the sales tax for the city, help others help pay for the improvements to the system, as we're able to spread the fixed cost of the utility to more units of production. It means that the Oklahoma City resident pays less than they would pay if we weren't making those sales. Next slide. So since the early 1990s, Oklahoma City has been doing long-term financial forecasts to determine what we needed to do, when we needed to do it, so that we could make room in the financial plan of the utilities to be able to afford to put in this next 100-mile pipeline, so that we could incrementally adjust rates over time and not have rate shock by large increases as we start the construction of this new project. As that plan became implemented, we were able to have many opportunities to go before Moody's and Standard & Poor's for ratings, and we've gone from AA- to AA+ and now AAA with both S&P and Moody's as we've implemented that capital plan, where we blend a certain amount of our expenditures are funded from bonds, and another part are funded from year-end revenues we call PAYGO, pay-as-you-go financing. And that blend of about 60% debt financing, 40% cash funded from net revenues makes it possible for us to have a very sound financial future so we can now afford to do these projects. When you look at our coverage ratios, everyone, like a lot of people are familiar with a FICO score, ours is the AAA rating. With that, there are two rating numbers that these rating agencies look at. One is called a revenue bond coverage. The other is called a fixed charge coverage. I'll talk a little bit about each one. With the revenue bond coverage of 2, it means that after satisfying operations and maintenance expenses, for every dollar we spend on debt service, we have another dollar available for PAYGO. We meet that 2 times coverage ratio. Another rating that came about in 2008 where Standard & Poor's recommended that utilities consider using a fixed charge coverage ratio. What that means is the base charges, before we sell 1 drop of water, can we meet our debt service? And so you take the revenues from fixed charges divided by the debt service, and if that's 1 times or better, then you're adequate. 1 times is adequate, and we are adequate at that. We're doing that too. Another thing that we look at is innovative contract pricing. The Water Trust and the City Council approved changes to the way that we charge for water outside city. In 2006, 2007 timeframe, we migrated to something called a service availability rate, where we charge based upon the capacity they potentially would use rather than the actual water they use on any particular year, because they have a propensity to use us more in drought and less in rainy weather, so we wouldn't have an even revenue flow. Now, with this new pricing, $8.4 million of the $9.8 million that we received in wholesale revenues last year were from fixed fees. So that provides us other financial benefit to the utility, to reliable revenue stream as we go forward on these improvements. Next slide. So Aquit has, just like the city, has a financial advisor, PFM, Public Financial Management, who has been helping us work through these financial plannings for many years so that we can stay on track and incrementally make these adjustments to fees over time and balance things out so we don't become over leveraged on debt. We blend that properly. And we do regular updates, and we converted to a commercial paper program about 10 years ago, so we reduced the amount of temporary interest financing that we have to spend on bonds. And We now have hired Carollo engineers about 4 years ago, where they started working with us on cost of service studies. Cost of service studies make possible for us to understand the amount of our revenues should be derived from fees to each class of service. What should residential customers pay based on their demand on our system? What should wholesale customers pay based on their demand on our system? Or commercial or industrial customers pay? What should irrigation pay? And so those analyses were done by Carollo, and then they used those to help figure out what should the fee adjustments be to each of those classes of customers. At the same time, one of the decisions that were made by the trust and the council was to incrementally move to the full method of water conservation oriented rates, where we have inclining block rates. We started out with 2 blocks, and we're going to be migrating to 4 blocks. And so those are built into this plan that you'll be presented today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer Ivey to provide you with the findings and recommendations.
All right, thank you, Brett. Okay, so first I'll start by explaining the process that we go through to develop the rate recommendations. It's a 3-step process. You can see here, the first step is called revenue requirements analysis. This is the step where we take the operating budget, the capital improvements plan, and we look forward and we determine how much of a revenue increase we need in each year in order to meet these requirements. Then we take that number, the amount of revenue that we need to bring in from rates, and we allocate it to the different customer classes, and that's the cost of service analysis. And we do that through several sub-steps to allocate those to the different rate components. And basically the point of that is to make sure that each customer class is paying its fair share by allocating costs related to peaking, customer service, things like that, based on how that customer class is using the system. So a customer class that peaks more than one that doesn't would pay more of those peaking related costs. After we determine how much revenue needs to be recovered from each class, we then go into the rate design, and that's where we determine what the rates need to be in order to recover that amount of the revenue from that class. So as Brett mentioned, we're now in phase 2 of our study. And in phase 1, we adjusted the base charges so that we could continue to recover at least 1 times that debt service payment from those fixed charges. We also established the 2-block conservation structure. That was for both residential and non-residential. And then we said, as part of our recommendations in phase 1, that in phase 2, we wanted to look at adding additional blocks, particularly for residential customers. So now that we're in phase 2, we are recommending a 4-block rate structure for residential and a 3-block rate structure for non-residential. We are also recommending the addition of a manufacturing customer class that would have a uniform rate. And that class would be for large industrial customers that have very low peaking factor. And as you can see here, the rate adjustments that we're recommending are largely driven by the Atoka pipeline project that Brett described. That's about 2.6% of the increase. And we also have an increase to the OG&E rates that are paid by the utility, and that was an additional 1.4% of this increase. So this slide here shows you a breakdown of the bills and the usage by usage amount. So you can see at the top, the first 2,000 gallons. So all customers that use 2,000 gallons, they're going to receive, or they're going to pay that lowest rate, the Block 1 rate, for that first 2,000 gallons. So really all of the customers are going to benefit from that. And these percentages, the first one here, the percentage of usage, that means 28.8% of the total usage would be billed at that Block 1 rate. And then you have 26.9% of your bills would only hit Block 1. That means you have 26.9% of your customers that are using 2% or less, or sorry, 2,000 gallons or less each month. And this is for residential, single-family residential customers. We are recommending taking what is now your Block 1, that is for the first 10,000 gallons, and splitting that into these two blocks so that you can benefit those customers who are using 2,000 gallons or less, and it would help offset the increase that we're recommending for that base charge so that we can try to keep their bills in that affordable range. We know that these are customers who are likely, they're low volume customers, so they could be retirees, they could be empty nesters. They probably have very little irrigation, if any. And so we want to encourage them to continue to conserve, and we want to reward them for the conservation that they've already been doing. And so then we have Block 2, which is now your next 8,000 gallons, so between 2,000 and 10,000. And these are still customers that are conserving. They're not using very much outdoor water. This is still mostly indoor usage, and so we also want that rate to be affordable. And then as we get into Blocks 3 and 4, this is where you're starting to have more outdoor usage, and that's what is driving those peaking costs. And so that's where we have higher rate increases. This graph illustrates the same table that we just saw. It's just in a graphical format. You can see the blue lines there separate the proposed blocks. And so you can see there, Block 1, you have 23% of the usage and about 27% of the bills. And you have then Block 2 is where you see a big jump in not only number of bills, but also in the usage itself. And then you can see that in that highest block, Block 4, we only expect about 5% of the usage to exceed 30,000 gallons per month, and 2% of your bills would actually hit that block. So this slide shows the proposed residential water rates. At the top, we have the base charge for a 5/8 inch meter. And so we're recommending going from $14.09 per month to $18.38 per month. And on average, that's an increase of $1.07 each year. And then you can see the 4 blocks there. The first 2,000 gallons, the next 8,000, next 20,000, and then anything over 30,000 gallons. And at the far right, you can see the average increase each year to the rate for that block. So again, that first 2,000 gallons is only seeing an increase of about 5 cents each year to that rate. For non-residential customers, we are recommending that we split that second block into a second and third blocks. So for the first block, we have all usage up to the average winter consumption, and that's the average of the consumption for bills during the 3 winter months. And we recommend an increase of roughly 14 cents per year to that rate. And then as we get to where we have more outdoor usage again, we're splitting that second block into 2 because we want to recognize that you do have some non-residential customers who have some seasonal usage, for example, hotels. Okay, so their peaking isn't just outdoor. It could simply be that that's how their business works. And so we want them to, they're going to pay more because they are causing peaking, but we don't want them to pay that highest rate simply because their business is seasonal. And so we have that second block, and that rate would increase by about 19 cents each year. And then for that highest block, where we do see a lot of irrigation, we recommend an increase of about 53 cents each year. And then at the bottom, you can see the proposed manufacturing rate. Again, that's a uniform rate, so it does not have blocks. It's just the same rate per 1,000 gallons for all of their usage. And we're recommending an increase of about 17 cents per year for that rate. So we're showing here some sample non-residential bills for different types of customers. Staff pulled bills for these, a sample bill for each of these customers, and so we're showing you the exact amounts that they would be paying if they were to have the same usage that they had in 2017. So at the top, we have a hospital. Their average winter consumption is 5,159 units, but they have a relatively high bill for that, as you can see if you compare them to the customer below that, which is a shopping mall. And so that means that that hospital has a high peaking factor. So they are hitting blocks 2 and 3 pretty regularly, whereas that shopping mall under that commercial category is likely not hitting those upper blocks very often. Their bill is pretty stable. We also have some sample manufacturing bills. Manufacturing customers use at least 5 million gallons a month. And so these are customers like Coca-Cola or Lopez Foods. And so you can see, because they have a uniform rate, their bill is pretty consistent, whether they use 5,000 units or 10,000 a month. It's just roughly double. For wholesale, as Brett mentioned, we have developed a rate structure that would recover the wholesale customers' proportionate share of the costs, both operating and capital. We have split the excess rate for service availability into 2 blocks. Again, this is further strengthening our conservation message that we want to give to all customers, including wholesale customers. And so you can see the average annual increase on the far right for each of those rates. And here are some sample wholesale water bills. The top is a sample service availability customer, and the majority of the wholesale customers are on this rate structure. And then we also have a take-or-pay rate structure, and so you can see a sample bill there for a take-or-pay customer. So now we'll move on to wastewater rates. We did not recommend any changes to the wastewater rate structure. We just simply updated the rates. So we have a fixed charge similar to water, and the recommended annual increase for that is an average of 54 cents each year for a 5/8" meter. We also have single-family, multifamily, and commercial industrial. They all pay the same uniform rate, and that is an average annual increase of 15 cents. And then for our industrial customers who have permits and are sampled regularly, they pay a rate for excess BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, and TSS, which is total suspended solids. So that's based on the strength of their wastewater that they discharge. And so those rates have also been updated, and you can see the average annual increase there to the right. For wholesale wastewater, again, it's a very simple structure. We did not recommend any change to that. We simply updated the base charge and the uniform volumetric rate. And so here is a sample wholesale wastewater bill, and you can see the average annual increase to that bill to the right. So when we combine the recommended water and wastewater increases, we're showing here some sample bills for residential customers. At the top, that's your low volume customer. We're assuming that they are taking 2,000 gallons of water each month and that they're discharging 2,000 gallons of wastewater each month. And you can see the average annual increase to their total bill is $2.02. For your typical residential customer, they would use 7,000 gallons a month of water, and they would discharge 5,000 gallons a month of wastewater, and the average annual increase to their bill is $3.36. And then even for your highest user, their average annual increase is still less than $20. And so here we're showing sample bills, typical bills, that's 7,000 gallons of water, 5,000 gallons of wastewater, for several different utilities to compare to Oklahoma City. And in the middle, you see the bill for existing rates for Oklahoma City is $60.29. With the proposed rates, it would increase to $63.57, and it still stays there in the middle of this graph here. And keep in mind that all of these utilities that we're showing, this is their 2017 rates, so it's likely that they are also going through a similar rate increase, and their bills would all increase for 2018 as well. And now I will turn it over to Brett to summarize.
Okay.
So in summary, with the approval of this rate plan and financial plan, the city and the trust will be able to initiate the construction of the Atoka pipeline to secure a long-term water supply for the city. So we'll have ample water supplies through 2060. We will have implemented fully the conservation-oriented rates so that we will provide a financial incentive for people to conserve water and know what the cost of that additional water is if they waste water in the rain or whatever. The rates will be cost of service based, so each class will pay their fair share as we implement the capital plan. No subsidy between classes. We're going to have a minimal impact to usage at Block 1 and Block 2, and the brunt of that will be at the higher amounts of water use, regardless of the class you're in. Wholesale customers will fund their share of system improvements, and we'll have a new manufacturing rate so that we won't overcharge them as we encourage economic development in our community and their use to help pay for our improvements. With that, we'll open it up to questions.
All right, questions for Brett? All right, nice job of explaining it. Thank you all. All right, item is just being introduced today. We have a motion. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Public hearing will be set for November 7th. All right, on to item 9J, this is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under 9J? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9K is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under 9K? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9L is a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Is there anyone here to speak under 9L? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9M is a public hearing regarding the removal of properties from the abandoned buildings list. Is there anyone here hoping to speak? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9N is a resolution that would amend the debt management policy for the city. And
yes, Mayor.
Kenny Soodle's here.
Kenny Soodle.
Yeah.
Morning, Kenny Soodle with the Finance Department. Very quickly, if you recall, the debt management policy was adopted by Council in February of 2015. Pardon me. It sets the general policies, limits on debt issuance, structure, et cetera. So one of the things it also deals with is the selection of the service providers that we use when we do a bond issue. So, sorry, one of those proposed changes, or the proposed changes before you today, is really about how we select underwriters. And so what we're proposing is that we provide the ability to do an underwriter pool. So just to give you some background, a debt issuance is a pretty lengthy process, takes 3 to 4 months, multiple approvals. You all see multiple resolutions or ordinances depending on the type. If the trust is involved, they have to approve things. There's rating meetings, et cetera. So when we do a negotiated sale, which is what we do in the majority of these, we select an underwriting team, and typically we do an RFP process. That RFP process can usually take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, and so that's a lot of time on top of the other approvals, et cetera. Generally what we do in that RFP is we ask the underwriters a whole bunch of questions. It really covers two areas. One of the areas is what are their qualifications? The other set of questions relate to the specific bond deal that's at hand. So if this change was approved, we really would keep a very similar process. What we would do is issue a request for qualifications, and on that process, we would ask the same questions about their qualifications that we normally ask. And then a committee would be formed to make recommendation to this body about who should be included in that pool. Once the pool is approved by council, then when we have a bond deal, we would still do a mini RFP process that would ask that same second set of questions, the things that are specific to that bond deal. And same thing, there would be a committee that would review it, bring it back to the council or the trust for approval. So really, at the end of the day, it's asking the same questions. It's still a staff committee review. It's still council approval. We're just asking to make this change so that we believe that having a pool process would take about 2 to 3 weeks maybe of time as opposed to the 6 to 8. And really, it's partly about adding efficiency to staff's time, but really it's about allowing us, the city or the trusts, to respond to market conditions that may be changing. So for example, if rates are going up, maybe we're doing a refunding to try to save some money, that we can get that done a little bit quicker. So in conclusion, this is just adding to the currently used RFP process, and that RFP process would still be authorized under the debt policy. This is just adding that concept of having a pre-qualified pool of underwriters to choose from. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, questions for Kenny?
Yeah, how often would you, or how would one go about getting an addition or a deletion from that pool?
So very similar to, we do this in our treasury area too, kind of on broker dealers, and it's one that if there were amendments or a change in the status of someone, certainly that could be brought back any time, but we anticipate that we're working through some of the procedures on this, but we anticipate it's something that we would bring back every 5 years anyway for just kind of reapproval, additions, deletions, but certainly any time we could come back and make a deletion or an addition. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to leave the regular RFP process. If there was ever a specialized deal that we felt like there were some firms that weren't in our pool that we needed to look at, we could go ahead and just do the regular RFP process.
Thanks.
Okay.
I mean, this is really similar to what we do with contractors, I think. We have an approved pool of folks to bid, and then we go out for an RFP on a specific project, but they have to be pre-approved. Already see heads nodding, so I hope that's correct. So to me, this makes a tremendous amount of sense. Thanks for thinking of it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions for Kenny?
Move the item.
All right, we're voting on item 9N. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9O is an item that's already been presented to the council. Today we would just adopt it, and this is the city's updated hazard mitigation plan for 2017.
Yes, Mayor, if any council have any questions, I do have Frank Barnes, our emergency manager, here today to answer those for you if you have any questions.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9P is a resolution that would call for the election of a new mayor. That election will be February 13th. And the runoff would be April 3rd if necessary. Is there a motion to authorize the calling? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And then item 9P is a proclamation relating to the same item. It just allows us to call both the primary and general elections for the purpose of electing a new mayor. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9Q is a resolution for a salary continuation. Understand we do not need executive session on this item. So is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. 9R, understand we do not need executive session. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item S, I understand we do need executive session, so a motion to move that into executive session would be in order. All right, cast your votes. Item 9S moves to executive session. Item 9T, I understand we do not need executive session. Is there a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9U, I understand we do not need executive session. Is there a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9V, understand we do not need executive session. Is there a motion there? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9W was the opportunity we had earlier to move the case that Amanda was discussing into executive session, but we did not do that, so we just strike that from the council agenda. All right, and then on item 9X, I understand we do need executive session. Is there a motion there? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9Y, I understand we do need executive session. Is there a motion there? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 10 is items from council. The first item would pay for expenses for Councilman Stone to go to Durant, Oklahoma for the South Oklahoma City Chamber's annual planning retreat. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 11 is city manager reports.
Items from council.
Oh, yeah, of course. Let's go over items from council. Mark?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say thank you for including the smaller school districts in Teachers of the Year. By you doing that, that allowed us to recognize the smaller school districts, such as Millwood, Cricket Oak, and several other school districts that I have in Ward 7. So thank you for that. Mr. Manager, I would like at a later date to get an update on staffing for the fire department. I know at one point in time we had rigs being out of service, and having rigs out of service did affect portions of Ward 7, especially the rural part. And so we can get an update on where we are for staffing for the fire department. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick things. I really wanted to thank Amazon and congratulate the Oklahoma School of Science and Math for receiving a $15,000 grant for their STEM programming yesterday. I know you were there and took a tour and had a chance to meet some of those amazing kids.
It's an amazing curriculum.
It is just a fantastic.
They go to school from 8 to 5, and then they have 2-hour study hall every night, Tuesday through Thursday. Yeah.
It's a real hidden gem, and they just continue to lose funding, and so to be able to partner with somebody like Amazon now, and GE's been a big part of helping them. It's a great school.
Yes.
And I'd like to just take this chance to also congratulate Ballet Oklahoma and the Oklahoma City Philharmonic. Civic Center didn't have an empty seat for their performances of Swan Lake this weekend. And you know, I've been in Oklahoma City for a long time, and that ballet has come so far. I want to say leaps and bounds, and I probably shouldn't make that pun, but they've just grown in talent and capacity. And most people have probably seen that the Kirkpatrick Philanthropies just made a $2 million contribution to the ballet for education programming, their new building up on Classen, but also for their endowment. So we should expect great things to come for a long time.
That's great news.
Really nice.
David?
Your Honor, just a question, really, or a comment or recommendation, and it relates to a study of the economic impact of the previous MAPS program. I know there's been a study that was performed with respect to the first MAPS program, but I'm wondering if the city, and we could talk about this later, I'm just bringing it up, could engage an economic study that would look at two things. One, the resulting private investment that followed public investment, and then secondly, the economic impact of the MAPS program, which would take into account employment and things like that. And if the city initiated this study, it might be thought of as being more independent, you know, and we could probably have input as to what issues we members of the council think are important in regards to that study. So if we could just begin talking about that to see, and I know we are still in the process of completing several of the projects related to the current MAPS program, but we could at least begin talking about it, maybe have a plan put in place towards the second half of 2018 to look at that.
Yeah, well, we are coming up on the 25th anniversary of the vote next year, so it'll be 1 year away. That might be a good time to.
That would be great.
You have to start it now, though, is what I'm saying. Is what
At least begin to plan for it. And I'm going to make a statement which probably is incorrect. You know, as it relates to the Maps for Kids, I just don't see that program, as important as it was, providing a stimulus for private investment. It just wasn't designed for that. But I do think the MAPS 1 and MAPS 3, those types of investment do attract additional private investment. And I just think it would be interesting to see. And I just think having the city initiate or sponsor the study might be good. Anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Could I just make a quick comment on David's? Because I do think the important thing about Maps for Kids that we seem to forget is that made an investment in every single one of our neighborhoods. You know, we've talked a lot about that idea of Maps for Neighborhoods, but Maps for Kids invested in every single one of our school buildings, and they are, by definition, scattered in neighborhoods all around the city. And so I do think that's important in terms of investment.
No, and that's a great point. And again, I was probably incorrect in making such a broad statement like that. So let's bring that program into the study as well, because I do think that's an extremely important point. Putting resources into these individual neighborhoods did have an impact on them. And often you see the neighborhoods surrounding a school in a little bit better condition than those further away. So, thank you.
Todd? Okay, Larry? Ed?
I had a conversation last week with a very dedicated, super nice guy from the Pew Charitable Trust. He probably sent all you guys emails, and he was here to, he basically is lobbying Senator Lankford, Inhofe, to try and get a dedicated funding source for national parks. And so he wants to meet with the council. He's met with Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. And I think there's 116 cities that have passed resolutions asking for the federal government to try and find a dedicated funding source, because there's like $12 billion in deferred maintenance in U.S. national parks. And in Oklahoma, we have 32 million. And so Congressman Tom Cole is co-sponsoring a bill called the National Park Service Legacy Act. And I think that different cities, which include like Seattle, Atlanta, they're not necessarily endorsing that specific act, but just calling on the federal government to have a dedicated funding source. Not exactly, still confused about how the National Memorial here in Oklahoma City works, because we have our own marathon and funding and stuff like that. But in any case, he'd like to meet with the council. He'd like to come address the council next month and have us consider one of these resolutions. So I'm just the messenger. But I told him, I committed to him that I would pass out what he brought to me, and it includes just information, sample resolution, the other cities that have passed it, Tom Cole's Act, information about the national parks in Oklahoma that have deferred maintenance needs, and so forth. Thank you.
Ed, that's an interesting idea. And you know, since the lower half of the Core to Shore Park is yet to be started.
Thank you.
If there's,
deem it a national park.
Hey, I wouldn't be opposed to it. And then to have it further along the river, if we could get some federal assistance for that to continue to develop. It's a great area, really.
Right.
So I would encourage that communication.
Well, there's also a list in here of organizations in Oklahoma that support it. I think the U.S. Conference of Mayors has come out in favor of it. So just for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Shadid, for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
All right, the EMSA renewal update.
No report on that. It's just a report. We don't have a presentation on that, Mayor. We do have a presentation, though, by Mike Carrier from the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Pleasure to be back in front of you all after just a couple of weeks. Seems like not long ago I was here to do my annual report, but we find ourselves at the end of the first quarter. First quarter has been a good quarter for us. We are on target to meet all of our goals for this year. Have had a good first quarter with a number of bookings and a lot of interest in what's going on here in Oklahoma City. I think you have sales and use tax report in front of you today also, but our hotel tax, as one indicator, we are up 4.9% through the end of the first quarter of this fiscal year. 5 of the last 6 months, the hotel tax has seen an increase. So certainly looks to be trending in the right direction. Not during the first quarter, but just to bring your attention to a couple of things. We attended a major trade show in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, IMEX America, 12,000 participants, including exhibitors, meeting planners, event planners, vendors, suppliers, et cetera. And as a part of that, we had the opportunity to schedule appointments with meeting planners that wanted to visit with us. We had 53 30-minute appointments over the course of 3 days. That's 26 and a half hours that 2 of my folks spent on their feet, standing in the booth, meeting with people that wanted to talk to us about the new convention center. That doesn't count all of the walk-ups. It was very gratifying to see that kind of result, but it was also great because our booth is 10 feet by 20 feet. Omni's booth is 50 feet by 50 feet, and on the far side of a 500,000 square foot hall. And Omni was sending people over to see us. They were talking about the hotel and sending people over to see us to see the plans for the new convention center. So some really outstanding interest in it. We've got a lot of things to follow up on now. And as we get closer to bidding and to groundbreaking, we should begin to see some real strong results. Councilman Shadid, I also met with the gentleman from Pew, and we're very, very supportive of that. It's and I don't remember all of the details of their plan, but they have identified some undedicated funds somewhere in the federal government that they're asking Senator Langford to get on board with in terms of helping to move a little bit of that at least into parks. Coming from East Tennessee and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, I know the value of those, and certainly what we have here, while we don't have as large or as many as we have in other parts of the country, the national parks serve a tremendous purpose and are a great tourist attraction, no matter where they are or what they are. A lot of folks love traveling to those, so we would be very supportive of that also. Happy to answer any questions. Again, thank you for your support, and we'll keep pushing and be back to see you in another 90 days.
All right, David?
Mike, I do have a question. Since you used the term IMAX in talking about the convention center, we've never really looked into the details from an electronics or a visual component with respect to the convention center, have we?
Well, just kind of the assurance that we would have a technology, you know, that was
right.
Cutting edge for meet
the
the expectation.
The backbone for a very high-end technology program is certainly built into what's being designed. Having been through the construction of these things before, the final implementation of that is really late in the program.
Yes.
Because anything you buy today is going to be out of date before we break ground. So, you know, it's having that backbone in there, having the capability, and Populous and their consultants are very, very good on that.
Well, I'll just go out and make this statement that it might be wise if we set aside some of the surplus, if we do have any surplus on the MAPS 3 funding, for something that would set apart the Oklahoma City Convention Center from a visual electronic standpoint. And I'm not that familiar with what's out there to even give you any examples, but I think it would be well worth that consideration to set aside some funding along those lines, to, again, just to set the Oklahoma City Convention Center apart from the others. Thank you.
All right. All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay,
Is that
Mayor.
it, MT?
Well, we do have included in your packet the fiscal year 2018 first quarter interim financial report for your consumption. And we also have the October 2017 use and sales tax report. Kind of happy to see that October came in about 2.4% above projections on the sales tax side and 4.5% above projections on the, 2.4% above on the sales tax side and 1.8% above on the use tax side. So I think we're doing pretty good. That gives us a total of about 1.1% above projections for the year on both of those. I think that's it.
Okay. We have executive session. We'll be back.